Welcome to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week commencing the 21st of April. I'm going to share some standout details to begin with to look out for, then on screen the event chart right at the start of the week, always influential as a backdrop for the following 7 days. Then as influences feed in, I'll go through each of them frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what we can all collectively expect. Then, please stay with me, I'll go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. A warm welcome, I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it thrive and do so now. But also please click or tap the bell notification symbol. Every time I release a video, you should get an alert. Also, if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consultant astrologer. Please check out the testimonials of the people who've had consultations. I have a new service which is proving really popular. You can have your video astrology reading where I share all your charts on the screen but send them to you. So it's remote and you can check out details of that below too. My long-standing special offer for your life roadmap report, but also your 12 months transits and 30% off is also still available. The life roadmap report is absolutely the most important document we'll ever read because it's the blueprint and it helps us to understand how our life's journey has played out, the energies and patterns that have repeated themselves. A better understanding of those helps us to seize the moment in a much more effective way with those transits. Please see below for more. This week has a new moon in the sign of Taurus. Taurus is very much about, in a positive sense, the things we can enjoy in life, whether it's good food, good wine, maybe some creature comforts, maybe it's to do with nice clothes too, maybe jewellery, things that we have a connection to. But we can also forge attachments through the sign of Taurus. And this particular new moon this year, I have to say, is somewhat complex. In fact, this week is one of the most complex I can remember for a very long time. Please stay with me as I go through it and explain exactly why. So right at the start of the week, the event chart provides the backdrop for the whole 7 days. We need to focus on the two luminaries. We've spoken of the sun, just arrived into the sign of Taurus at 1 degrees and 9 minutes. But up there at the top of the chart, we have the moon just into the sign of Aquarius. So Monday's going to see a quarter moon. These happen twice a month. They provide a strong influence for the following 7 days. But of course, the new moon comes later in this week on Sunday. What does that quarter moon mean? Well, you can see it's very close to the transformative energies of Pluto. Now, Pluto can be the revealer, but it also can be very much about power, and it can be about, in its more darker format, it can be about control, coercion. And because the collective that's represented by the sign of Aquarius is how we all network, I think we just need to be conscious of the messages that are being fed in our direction. But also you can see the sun and the position of the moon linked back, in the moon's case in an opposition to Mars, and in the sun's case in a square to Mars. Now that's going to reach a peak on Tuesday, but the square between the sun and Pluto reaches a peak on Wednesday. But essentially, the sun is in a T-square with Pluto and Mars for the whole of this week, and including the new moon. Why is that especially significant? Well, the fact that the moon is so close to Pluto, opposite Mars, and squaring the sun at the start of the week suggests there could be some revelations. Some information can come into the public domain. And maybe it is to do with fairness, which the sign of Aquarius can be about, the sign of Taurus can be about everyday money. But Mars, recently returned to Leo, is very much about the identity of us individually. So it's more to do with our ego manifestation in a very constructive way. If we're talented in terms of the arts or performance or music, it can certainly help us to shine. It's also much more energized here than it was in Cancer, but it can be feisty, but it's much more focused on what we want in the here and now. So the impatient right angle between the Sun and Mars at the start of this week could override the Moon's desire for some kind of collaboration or cooperation. But because Pluto is there, we're also possibly going to see a lot of very intransigent energy this week, because the Sun, Mars, the Moon to begin with, and Pluto are all in fixed signs, and fixed signs don't like to yield. They can be quite unbending. They like to attach themselves to the things that work for them. So in the case of the Sun, it could be money. In the case of Mars, it's very much about ego. And in the case of Pluto, very close to the Moon in Aquarius, it might be what we want idealistically, but it may be what someone else wants to deny because of the power of Mars, and particularly its angle back to Pluto. So that Mars-Pluto opposition was showing up when we had Cardinal Quadrant 4 last year with the winter solstice. And really, from that point, the 13 weeks from that point through to the spring equinox was most tumultuous. And it is a very warlike opposition because Mars is impatient, very prideful in Leo, and Pluto in the sign of Aquarius is where power can be used collectively upon all of us. So we need to be honest about that. So I think what can show up this week in a big way is where our values do not align to other people, particularly as Venus, the ruler of the sign of Taurus, is afflicted by Saturn this week once more. It has broadly been in a conjunction for the whole of this month. This is not the first time on Wednesday when they come into an exact conjunction. It happened on the 7th of April, but if you recall, that conjunction was also there in terms of the inauguration chart of the president. So on the 20th of January, yes, Saturn and Venus were conjunct, and we have seen a lot of cutbacks in terms of services, 12th house, where we look out for people who are perhaps more vulnerable, but we've also seen financial instability. What we've also got on Monday for the first time in 150 years is an exact conjunction between Saturn and the true North Node in the sign of Pisces. And because Saturn in Pisces is very much about outcomes and consequences, it's coming to the end of its 29.5-year journey, which will occur formally at the start of next year. But of course we've got an interlude which begins on the 25th of May when Saturn moves into Aries for 3 months and 7 days. So I feel that whether it's about money, relationships, differing values, we are going to see some very polarized positions, but also some very tense discussions. Now, in terms of Taurus, Taurus is very much about the earth, but it's also about land. Unfortunately, I did predict that there could be an earthquake, tsunami or volcano this month. I think we have had a volcano that's been active in Alaska, but we've also sadly had the earthquake in California. And this chart this week does present more potential for that. I hope I'm wrong, quite frankly. But more constructively at the start of this week, we do have Mars and Mercury and also Neptune in a very positive link if we can use the energy of the combination of Neptune and Mercury in a good way, because Neptune in Pisces, it may rule that sign, but it has over the last year since 2012 created an enormous amount of confusion and perhaps even avoidance, addiction. We've seen all of these things very much to the fore. Now, Neptune moving into Aries is teasing out some constructive possibilities. For example, last week I read that they can now have the science, the scientific techniques to convert seawater, the carbon in seawater, into physical energy, just as Neptune's making its way into the sign of Aries, fire energy. And also, as we start this week, you can see that Mercury and Pluto are in an excellent sextile. So if we use our detachment, which could be Pluto in Aquarius, don't rush things, analyse things carefully, try not to get too caught up in the standoffs, we can hopefully navigate this week all the better. But once we get to that new moon, which does occur on Sunday, provides a backdrop for the following month, we still broadly got the square between the Sun, the T-square between the Sun, Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius. So do expect, I feel, some very stubborn positions to be maintained through this week. I think we're going to see much more constructive action developing in May. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. Aries, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast could see you focused a lot on money. Because of the Sun's arrival in the sign of Taurus, that's very much about being more conscious of the ins and outgoings in our situation. But because your ruler, Mars, is in quite a feisty right angle with the Sun for the whole of this week, and including the new moon, which occurs at the end of the week, you could also potentially find yourself a little bit more impetuous when it comes to splashing out on something that you find very hard to resist. That could even be someone you find very hard to resist, because Mars in your sister fire sign of Leo is certainly going to ignite your desire to have a good time, particularly through to the middle of June. And Mars is also forging a great link with Mercury in your sign right at the start of this week. So if you wanted to initiate a new plan, the thrust to do so can be very strong. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it's just that something to do with your psyche, perhaps an old situation or relationship, could create a little bit of inhibition, which stops you from really going for it in the bold way that you're known for. On the other hand, you may encounter or become much more conscious that someone you're quite friendly with actually has a very different worldview to you. And whilst up to now, you may have thought it's okay if people see things a little differently, if there's something you're very invested in or very attached to and they just don't get where you're coming from, the potential for a weak relationship to actually come to a close is extraordinarily strong this week, I feel. That said, if you do want to initiate something and check out an investment or so on, just be conscious of the role of Pluto. Pluto's in the part of your chart to do with the long-term plan, and therefore if you are thinking about doing something this week that requires almost a very quick and binding decision, it might not necessarily be the best thing for you if you rush that. So if there's something that you're contemplating that does require a lot of thought, don't get caught up in the urgency and, quite frankly, the impatience of your ruler squaring off to the position of the Sun and the new moon, but also opposing Pluto, because if you do rush something, it might be that you haven't quite seen a detail or don't know an important piece of information that potentially could be being withheld from you. So it's important to be very positive. You can be very positive, but if you are feeling in the mood to really splash out, I would just proceed with a little bit more of caution. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those, as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Taurus, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast has lots of different strands to it. One that stands out for me right at the start of the week is that Venus, your ruler, is forging an electric link to Uranus, the planet of change, which has been pushing and provoking you to be more experimental since it entered your sign full-time in March 2019. So it may be, with Uranus and Venus in such a strong alliance, that you could be drawn to a new group of people, or people who are very stimulating to be with. Ironically, because Venus meets exactly with Saturn at the heart of this week, there could be some other people that you want to move away from. There may not necessarily be a bitter falling out. It's just that with the new moon in your sign, the desire to take a stronger grip on your life direction and be more in control of your destiny is definitely going to be enhanced, particularly with that new moon at the end of the week. But it's a new moon in a complex relationship with Mars and Pluto. And in fact, all of this week, if you do want to strike out and do something very much on your terms, there could be objections from people very close to you or people professionally. If you're up for the challenge of those conflicts, then you could get the results you want. But you need to be aware, if you're wanting to make progress professionally and you do work in an environment which is a bit more perhaps set, perhaps a little more traditional, a bit top down in its approach, not so innovative led, that maybe you're wanting to get something that is a little bit out of reach. But your desire for change could be very strong this week, and that could see you much more direct in your approach as the week draws to a close. It's going to be very interesting how you bring that new moon into your situation. For some Taurus people, it could be where an ongoing project is where you can inject it with more urgency. For others, it can be starting afresh, a new idea, a new hobby or interest, or for others, a great opportunity to recast your personal appearance. So some kind of makeover could follow over the next few weeks. But if you are determined to do your own thing this week, the people who really support you are the people you're really going to appreciate. But there may be some people who just don't any longer quite get the direction of travel that you're taking. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those, as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Gemini, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast is going to see the new moon in the 12th house of your chart on Sunday. But 12th house new moons are quite complex and they can be quite challenging. But also, right at the start of the week, there's a quarter moon in your 9th house. The 9th house is great for higher knowledge, education, travel, but it can be in a square with the sun in the 12th, where facts get distorted in some ways, or something that you may ordinarily turn the other cheek to could get blown out of proportion, not necessarily by you, but by someone you encounter. In fact, all through this week, Mars now in the part of your situation which can give you greater confidence to express your ideas with conviction, but also with a great deal of pride, is in an opposition with Pluto. And Pluto can see your utterances therefore scrutinized. And because both of them are linking back to the sun in your 12th house, maybe is some ideas or some opposition to some of your ideas could start to amp up this week and over the next few weeks too. So the vital thing, Gemini, is to make sure that whatever you're saying is not just something that you passionately believe in, but is factually accurate. Now, Mercury, your ruler, actually forges a very penetrative, clear link with Pluto right at the start of this week. So if you don't rush things or don't react to things too quickly, you do have a great chance to make sure that you're very clear in what you're saying and thinking. But because Saturn is applying to the node at the start of the week and Venus, the relator, at the heart of the week, particularly professionally, that's where I feel it's going to be very, very important to choose your thoughts and the expression of your thoughts with great care. And because the sun in the 12th house and that new moon in traditional astrology can be secret enemies, so there may be some people who are just observing what you're doing, and they could be waiting to seize on a mistake with relish. Don't give them the opportunity. Make sure that anything you're writing, sending, authoring, or expressing is accurate, but also works for you if it is in fact challenged. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly, and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those, as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Cancer, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast now sees the sun in the part of your situation which is very much to do with how you socialise, your friendship group, but also your long-term plan. It also, in the 11th house, is about the things that go beyond the material world. But there could be some crunching realities around finance, for example, that you may need to consider this week, because Uranus, also like the sun in that gorgeous 11th house, is forging a beautiful link with Venus right at the start of this week, which will make you much more conscious of where there is a lack of manoeuvrability or freedom in your situation. And by the heart of the week, as Saturn applies to Venus, if you do feel really hemmed in, and that is having some kind of impact on your sense of well-being or happiness, even if it does mean changing your financial situation by flexing into doing something else, you may seriously consider releasing an approach that at the moment may bring in the money but doesn't feed your soul. So by the time we get to the new moon on Sunday at the end of the week, if there are some calculations that you need to think about in terms of the ins and outgoings around finance, but also what you truly want from your future that would make your heart soar, that's going to be the nub of that new moon energy. And it's going to go on for the next month, the backdrop of it, so some big transformation may come to pass, and it could see you turning away from a material opportunity but embracing something that really brings a sense of elevation and uplift to your heart. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those, as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Leo, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast saw late last week two big changes. The sun moved to the top of your chart, which can be very much to do with raising our profile. Achieving more recognition, people can become much more conscious of the talents and flair you have to share. But also, if you're very motivated in terms of your professional aspirations, goals and ambitions also are coming sharply into focus. And with the new moon this week, at the end of the week on Sunday, you could be in the mood to really push forwards in a very dramatic and dynamic way. The key, Leo, is tactics, because Mars also moved late last week, into your sign. Now, Mars in Leo is a much happier location than it was in Cancer, but it can embolden you. It can certainly inspire you to demonstrate your flair. But because it's in an opposition with Pluto all this week, Pluto is very much about power. It can be about leverage, and Mars can be about force. Put the two together and they both square back to the sun. If you try to push too hard or try to get your own way in a situation where the person you're dealing with is much more used to a conventional or well-established way of doing things, it might not quite work. So that's why the tactics are really important. If you work in an existing organisation and you don't feel very appreciated, whether it's in terms of the role or the contribution you make or financially, the tension around that can be palpable, particularly at the heart of the week as Saturn and Venus once more come into a conjunction. But that also can cause some complexities in the personal relationship. If you're wanting to change something and perhaps take more of a leading role, your partner could resist it if they feel that you're being too controlling. But equally, it could be you who feels that someone's trying to leverage you. The trick this week, I feel, is the role of Mercury. Mercury is now in a very free-spirited part of your chart, forges a great link with Pluto at the start of the week. That helps you to cut through a little bit and perhaps detach yourself from some of your desires and be a bit more tactical. So that can be a good counterpoint. But if you really want to go for something this week and you're prepared to meet some opposition and meet it head on, then this could be a week of profound breakthroughs, but it could be a week of profound breakdowns if you're too impatient and want everything to fall into place too rapidly. So the 10th house is an area that you could make real progress around. So those goals and ambitions are within reach. So it's just marshalling any impatience or frustration that you may be feeling that things aren't quite going at quite the speed that you would like. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Virgo, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast accentuates that part of your nature which is very, very conscientious. And because the sun has now moved into another part of your chart, there's very much more to do with freedom, new experiences, liberation, adventure, independence. It's just going to make you even more aware of where you don't want to let anyone down, or perhaps you're pinned in because you have a very conscientious approach, or perhaps if you're truly honest, you're a little bit attached to routine. So you're being asked, particularly with the new moon at the end of this week, to be open to some changes, open to be more spontaneous. Now there is, with Uranus in the same sector as the Sun, forging a terrific link with Venus and with Saturn at the start of this week, there is a chance that if you connect with people who, like you, want to do something fresh and stimulating, that can be something where you can bond together and collaborate in a very effective way. So what might stop you? Well, it's the fact that Mars is now in a very psychological part of your chart, and the moon at the start of the week and Pluto are in your 6th house. That 6th house is where there's going to be a lot of change for you over the next few years. Because you can have an appreciation of a very metronomic lifestyle which has those routines, those rhythms, perhaps even to some degree the personal patterns that give you a sense of structure, those could be shook up by pushing outside them, and therefore you could feel a little conflicted this week. But then again, maybe some old issues which have been bubbling around in the depths of your being could come to the surface, because the 12th house position of Mars can be very, very tricky, and the 9th house can amplify how we feel. So whether it is at work, where if you're the person who always covers for everyone else, takes on extra shifts, is very conscientious, but don't really feel very appreciated, and you just think, look, I need to break out, whether it's a vacation, a day off, or you just need to change your personal routines, all of that's possible. But equally, it could be something much deeper. If you feel locked into something that's making you feel low, dispirited, isn't really giving you the encouragement to be a freer spirit, that's what you need to be grappling with most of all this week. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those, as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Libra, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast sees Mercury, the planet of communication, in a perfect alliance with Pluto right at the start of this week. It's very, very helpful, that, because Mercury in the 7th house helps us detach a little bit, listen to what other people are saying, and not necessarily be so affected if they have a different viewpoint. But also because Mars moved into a very social part of your scope last week, is opposite Pluto, the planet of change, in an area which is very much to do with your personal expression. One of the things that I feel the stars are asking you to do is consider the concept of evolution. Evolution may seem a posh word for change, but it's because it's not just changing something for the sake of it. It's because you're changing something with a plan, and you're evolving towards something that will long term be better for you. And that's going to crystallize for you, to be honest, in the last 10 days of May, when a sensational set of influences shape up. But in order to get to that prize, you may have to let go of something that you have been quite adhered to. It may be a job. It may be some practical relationships that are pretty good, but maybe have some downsides, some demands. And I feel if you do think towards where you're heading later in May, and there is something that's binding you in, some kind of control. It may be something that's controlling you from within you, or it may be a situation. It could be a romantic relationship where you feel someone's too possessive, doesn't let you have your own space. But Mercury's link with Pluto can help you to think about all this in that detached way, but still then prime yourself to be open for the evolution. Because if you are, where you get to towards the end of May could be one of the most exciting periods you've ever experienced, but it will require you to be positioned in ready to seize the opportunity, and that means being open to letting go of some things that no longer serve your greater good. For example, a job where maybe it served its purpose over a long period of time, but with Saturn and Venus crunching together at the heart of this week, if there's a lot of give and not a lot of acknowledgement, or you're wanting to experience something that's more playful and fun, listen to that inner voice. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those, as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Scorpio, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast sees a very dramatic skyscape. With your two ruling planets in direct opposition, Mars last week moved into your sector of ambition. For the next 2 months, you're going to want to punch through and achieve some kind of prize. It may be materially, could be creatively. It's just that being opposite Pluto in a very tender part of your chart, you might have to step outside of that part of your nature which can be a little bit shielded and protective in order to get to where you want to go. And your relationships will also be crucial to progress as well. But the Sun intersects both the position of Mars and Pluto all this week, including through the new moon. So whereas the new moon ordinarily each year is a great opportunity to bring better things your way around relationships, this year it is going to be a little bit of a push and pull. If you try to get what you want professionally, it could be that you need to step outside your comfort zone, but you still need to relate to the people that you're connecting to, and they may resist your desire in some ways as they see it to dominate, to be in control. Also, Venus, the relator, comes into a direct conjunction with Saturn. Yet again, this keeps repeating. And this time in your 5th house of romance, if there is something around a power battle that's going on between you and a partner, despite the fact the sun and the new moon are in your 7th house, it could just mean that you finally have to confront what's not quite working between you. But the converse can be true if you really want to seize a golden prize professionally, and it does mean in some ways breaking free of being a people pleaser or being in an organisation which is more collegiate, and you really just want to go for what you want in a direct way, and you don't mind stepping outside your comfort zone. This could be a week when you can really push forwards in a very bold, dynamic and self-confident way. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those, as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Sagittarius, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast has seen the Sun arrive to join Uranus in the part of your chart to do with life organisation, structures, details, anything to do with virtue. And in fact, Uranus there forges a terrific link with Saturn and Venus right at the start of this week. So if you wanted to change something at home, perhaps declutter, catch up on a domestic chore, remodel your physical environment, if you show imagination, Uranus, do it a little differently, you could unlock a solution to something that hasn't quite been working domestically for you. But it may also be that if you flex into someone else's needs, perhaps in the family, maybe around childcare, with a fresh approach, that too can be improved as well. However, if your home life isn't working very well for you, the fact that Saturn and Venus come into an exact conjunction again at the heart of this week can make you mindful of what you're not enjoying. And because the position of Mars in your 9th house, directly opposite Pluto in your 3rd house, that's charging up that part of you that does like to be a free spirit, doesn't like to be in any ways inhibited. So you could feel a bit conflicted this week. It may even be just at work. Something that you might ordinarily enjoy can just seem rather dull and uninspiring, and that really pushes you in some ways to embrace the energy of Mercury in the sign of Aries, but also Neptune. They're both linking back to Pluto in a very constructive way. You could have a conversation where someone can see where you're coming from. You're essentially trying to balance two very disparate parts of your existence. Uranus has been making life very difficult around structures over the last 5 or 6 years. Something always seems to be changing, which has created a lot of stress. Saturn over the last couple of years has been quite inhibiting emotionally, and Mars and Pluto now are asking you to get in touch with that more free-spirited part of your nature, but it may not be possible to just embrace that fully. So something has to give, and that may mean compromising on certain parts of your situation, setting some firmer boundaries on others, but being imaginative about improving the daily routines in other ways too. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Capricorn, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast is really dramatic, and it does have some very contrasting strands. Your ruler Saturn is at the heart of the mix. Right at the start of the week, Saturn's in a conjunction with the North Node in the part of your chart to do with your everyday interactions, but also your beliefs, but also the way you express yourself. Saturn also applies to Venus, the relator, on Wednesday. So care around communications is important. Now, ordinarily, you are someone who does tend to have a little bit of a safety first approach, but this week can confound you even by in some ways pushing you to be more daring, especially romantically, or perhaps even more impulsive, or would it be compulsive financially. Someone close to you could also ask for some kind of financial assistance at the start of the week, and you may need to say no, but choosing your response very judiciously will be important. However, as the week goes on, we do have a new moon. The new moon in the 5th house is really giving you an opportunity over the next 4 weeks to showcase your passion, but also your talent, your charisma, your artistry. But because of the role of Mars and Pluto, your desires are also very intense. And because the 5th house can be where we want to be very spontaneous, and it's where we want to demonstrate a glow, going for what we want in a very direct way may create some complications. So that part of your nature that tends to be very thoughtful, perhaps a little bit on the cautious side, that isn't something that I would steer too far away from this week. But whether life or someone in particular or an item that you find very difficult to resist breaks that caution, that remains to be seen. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Aquarius, over the last couple of years, Saturn, your traditional ruler, has been occupying the 2nd house of your solar chart. Saturn here asks us to economize, be thrifty, squeeze more out of our existing resources, be much more cautious about extravagance, maybe cut back a little bit. Neptune in that area until very recently may have made you very generous, but also at times may have seen you pursue some things that were a little more ephemeral. What Saturn's asked you to do is to get very grounded. But this week Saturn applies to the North Node, back in this sector for the first time in 12 years exactly, but also on Wednesday comes back into a final conjunction with Venus. Venus is the relator, but also the money planet. You could experience someone at the heart of this week who has very different values to you, and it may be starkly obvious and in fact a little alarming. Equally, that alarm could come from the fact that you've got to know someone better, and you can see that perhaps their approach to life is not really in tune with yours. So it may be a moment that you both realise that perhaps the relationship has run its course. It doesn't have to be a romantic tie. But also, if you have been experiencing a tightening up on your income over the last couple of years, this final conjunction between Saturn and Venus is worth really acknowledging, because now Mars, the planet of desire, has punched back into your 7th house of relating, but also where you can be combative. It's seeing you up for the challenge of seeking a better outcome for you. Saturn, of course, is also going to be moving on into the 3rd house of your situation on the 25th of May. Venus, incidentally, goes back there on the 1st of May. May generally is going to be a lot brighter, particularly the last 10 days. But last week, of course, the Sun also moved into the part of your chart to do with your home, your inner world, your emotions, your family life. And ironically, the Sun joins up with Uranus, your modern ruler, which links back to Saturn and Venus in a very constructive way. So your two co-rulers are actually on good terms this week, as long as you apply it to your home. So if you're wanting to make some repairs, perhaps start a home-based business, maybe enjoy some crafting or a hobby, and you can use resources you have in a productive way, that can be a great way to make the most of those energies. But late last week, Mars, the planet of desire, switched back into your sector of relating. It's going to be there through to the middle of June. And it's going to up your desire to get what you need. Now, because the 7th house for Mars can be combative, could give you that much more confidence about setting your boundaries. It's just that it's directly in an opposition with the Moon and Pluto right at the start of the week in your sign. So whatever you feel that you want as an individual, just be mindful of where the security lies in your situation. Mars in the 7th house can be very progressive, but it can also be very impatient. You may find yourself being perhaps a little bit edgy with people close to you this week, especially if there are some challenges that you're dealing with. But by the end of the week and the new moon, if you wanted to consider moving, redecorating, having a family gathering, or getting much more in touch with your inner world to try to understand your emotional well-being, or perhaps even research your genealogy, that new moon can still work for you, as long as you can be conscious that Mars and Pluto are creating quite a lot of urgency. It's a very compelling opposition, and the Sun needs to go at its own pace in the steady eddy Taurus. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those, as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more. Pisces, your week commencing the 21st of April forecast begins with something that hasn't happened for 150 years. The true North Node in your sign combines with Saturn in a conjunction. It's really momentous if we think about that. The sign of Pisces is the sign of culmination. Saturn rules time and karma, and so does the North Node. It's known as the point of destiny. So something very significant can occur for you at the start of this week that's to do with your identity or your individual talents and flair. But Venus, which is exalted in your sign, once again gets crunched by Saturn at the heart of this week, exactly in a conjunction. It happened again on the 7th of April. And it has been happening several times this year, if not always exactly. And what that's done in some ways has made you much more conscious. If you've got talents, you have to structure them in some ways. But Saturn's desire for that structure may at times be a little bit of a killjoy. But keep the faith, because the Sun late last week moved into a swift moving, communicative part of your scope, and also there is a new moon as the week draws to a close. It's just as this week begins, the Sun is in a 3 for you and 12 square with a quarter moon. So something could come up this week. It's not the best of weeks to be too open with personal information. I know sharing is a big thing these days, particularly on social media, but I feel that if you do say something, someone could seize on what you say and enjoy a tidbit and perhaps also embellish what you tell them. So if you don't know someone very well, I would keep your confidences very close to your chest. Mars, of course, also moved last week into your 6th house, which for the next couple of months can give your physical stamina and energy a boost. It's just that it's in an opposition with the Moon and Pluto at the start of this week. This is very complex stuff. The 12th house, where Pluto is for some years going to be asking you to look deeper and deeper inside, to release things that no longer serve your greater good. But the 12th house can also be where we learn that not everybody's got our back, and that could be part of what you experience this week. And because Saturn and Venus can be that slice of reality, maybe the reality is understanding that someone you did think you had some kind of connection with or friendship with, or was a fellow colleague you liked, you may actually find that they're not to be as trusted as you would have preferred. So fair weather friends can be revealed this week, unfortunately, but you can also become much more conscious of where you really need to focus your energy. Keep it very narrow. Don't spread yourself too thinly. And then you can use the energy of Mars in the most productive ways. Another thing this week, even if you do set yourself a list of priorities, I wouldn't be in too much of a rush to try to get through that list. Just take things step by step. Pace yourself is really the mantra. Please check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. I now have daily, weekly and monthly love horoscopes back on the site. I'm sure you'll enjoy those, as well as all the other goodies. You can also sign up for your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning. Please see the link below for more.